today's mindful moment, packed with insights but designed to fit into your busy life. We are going to be going through Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning today.
Oh, yeah. This book, it's helped so many people, and for a really good reason.
For sure.
I mean, it goes so far beyond just being a Holocaust memoir.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a guide for finding meaning in literally any situation.
Yeah, and any situation, like even the worst ones you can possibly think of.
Right, and one of the things that's so fascinating about Frankl is that, he was already a psychiatrist before he ended up in the camps. So he's bringing this, like, really unique psychological lens to everything that was happening to him.
That's so interesting.
He doesn't just describe the events, he analyzes why things happened and, how people found the strength to keep going when they were going through just unimaginable suffering.
Totally. And the part that I think is going to surprise some people is that Frankl actually says that suffering isn't necessary for meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have this assumption that we have to go through something hard to really appreciate the good things.
Sure.
But Frankl kind of pushes back against that.
Yeah. He's like, no.
He found meaning in Auschwitz, like literally in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
So that is what we are going to be looking at today.
For sure.
Like, how did he do that? And then more importantly, what can we take from that and apply to our own lives to find meaning even when things are really tough?
It's a great question. And to really get Frankl, I think we have to sort of immerse ourselves in what he went through.
Yeah.
Like the reality of his experience, his descriptions of life in Auschwitz are just chilling. Yeah. These prisoners were stripped of their names, their possessions, their identities. They were reduced to numbers.
It's hard to imagine.
It's hard to even fathom that level of dehumanization.
Yeah.
And there was the constant threat of death just hanging over everyone,
Yeah.
Arbitrary selections, brutal punishments. It was a daily struggle just to survive.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine like the psychological impact that has on, a person. The apathy, the emotional numbness that can just completely consume you.
And yet he still found these moments of humanity in these awful places.
He did.
I was really struck by the story he tells about hearing another prisoner playing a tango on a violin.
Oh, wow.
For somebody's birthday.
Mm.
And Frankl says that, like, in that moment of music, he was transported back to his wife.
Wow.
Back to life before the camps. And it gave him this brief sense of connection and hope.
That's powerful. And that anecdote really gets at Frankl's core idea.
Yeah.
Which is that the main driving force for humans is not pleasure, like Freud said, or power, like Adler said, but the search for meaning.
Meaning.
It's like a fundamental human, like it's as important to us as food or shelter.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now.
It really does challenge the traditional ideas about what motivates us.
He even says, and this is a powerful quote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow."
It really is. That quote just hits you right between the eyes, and that leads to the three sources of meaning that he identifies: work, love, and courage and suffering.
Yeah.
And each of these is a way for finding purpose and fulfillment, even when you're in difficult situations.
It's fascinating because each of those played a role in his own survival, but we hear a lot about finding meaning in our work.
We do.
But what does that even look like when you are in a concentration camp?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So Frankl, he actually talks about another prisoner, a scientist, who found meaning by working on finishing his scientific manuscripts.
Oh, wow.
Even though he knew he might not even live to see them get published.
Oh, wow.
But the act of creating and contributing to something bigger than himself, that's what gave him purpose.
That's incredible.
And it helped him transcend the suffering that was going on around him.
So even in that situation, he was able to tap into a future where his work could have value.
Exactly. It's all about finding that glimmer of hope, that sense of purpose that keeps you going when everything else seems completely lost.
So, okay, let's bring this down to earth a bit,
Sure.
How did he actually apply all this stuff to survive Auschwitz?
Right.
Like, it's one thing to talk about finding meaning, in your work or in love, but how do you actually do that?
Right.
When you are surrounded by death and despair like that?
So Frankl used a bunch of different strategies, and they're surprisingly relevant to us today.
Really?
Even if we aren't facing anything as extreme as that.
Okay.
One of the things he did was focus on the future. Like, he would imagine himself reunited with his wife, giving lectures after the war was over, about the things he learned.
So he gave himself a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
Like a vision of a future that was worth fighting for.
Exactly. And he also found comfort in the small things, like a beautiful sunset or a bird landing nearby, just these tiny moments of beauty.
Oh, yeah.
They offered a little break from all the darkness.
It's amazing how much those little things can mean.
It is.
We can all relate to that, even if our problems are nothing like what he went through.
Absolutely. And then there's humor.
Humor.
Yeah. Frankl and his friends would make jokes.
Oh, wow.
Find ways to laugh, even when they were facing unimaginable suffering.
Wow.
I mean, it's a testament to just how resilient the human spirit really is.
Yeah, humor can be a really powerful coping mechanism.
It really can.
It's like it lets off some of the pressure,
Yeah.
Helps you see things differently.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's helping others.
Yeah.
Frankl actually volunteered to work in the typhus ward.
Oh, wow.
Knowing that it could very well mean that he would die.
Wow.
But he found meaning in putting the needs of others ahead of his own.
That is just incredible. Wasn't there a time when he actually could have escaped?
There was.
But he chose to stay and help his patients.
He did.
That story just gets me every time.
It's powerful, and it shows what Frankl meant by finding meaning in suffering.
Yeah.
He found peace in choosing to serve others, even if it meant putting himself at risk.
Wow.
And this leads to one of Frankl's most insightful ideas.
Okay.
The idea that even when things are really, really bad, we always have the freedom to choose our attitude.
Our attitude.
Our response.
That's his famous quote, right?
It is. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances.
Wow, that is so powerful.
It is. It's the foundation of his whole philosophy.
Yeah.
He even tells this story about a doctor, Dr. J, who was labeled a mass murderer.
Oh, my God.
But when he was in prison, this guy totally changed.
Wow.
Became a selfless caregiver.
Really?
It shows that even people who have done awful things,
right,
they still have the potential to change, to find meaning and redemption.
That is an amazing story.
It is.
It really shows that we have the power to choose, and we're not just defined by the things we've done in the past.
Exactly. And from all of these experiences, from seeing all this human suffering firsthand, but also the resilience and transformation.
Right.
Frankl came up with logotherapy.
Okay.
Which is more than therapy. It's almost like a philosophy for life.
It is.
Logotherapy focuses on helping people find meaning in their lives. It's built on the idea that we all have this will to meaning.
Will to meaning, okay.
This deep need to find purpose and importance in our existence.
Okay, I like that.
And that's where his concept of the existential vacuum comes in.
Oh, yeah, the existential vacuum. Tell me about that.
So the existential vacuum is that feeling of emptiness and meaninglessness that so many people feel in today's world.
Right.
It's like that sense of being lost, not knowing what it all means.
I think we've all felt that.
I think we have.
At some point, even if we haven't gone through anything as extreme as Frankl did.
Right. It's a universal human experience.
It is.
And Frankl thought that this lack of meaning is at the root of a lot of psychological problems.
Really?
Depression, anxiety, addiction, you name it.
Wow. So if we're feeling lost, struggling to find meaning in our lives, where do we even start?
Right.
What did Frankl say we should do?
So Frankl believed that we don't invent meaning.
Okay.
We discover it.
We discover it. Okay.
And he laid out 3 main ways to find it.
Okay, I'm listening.
Creating something or doing something.
Okay.
Experiencing something or meeting someone.
Okay.
And the attitude we have towards suffering that we can't avoid.
Okay, so that's like everything from our work to our relationships to how we handle tough times.
Exactly. And within each of those areas, there are so many possibilities.
Yeah.
It could be diving into a passion project.
Yeah.
Building relationships with people we care about.
Yeah.
Finding a way to learn from a tough experience.
Yeah.
Or even just taking the time to appreciate the beauty around us.
So it's not about finding some big, huge purpose for our whole lives.
Right.
It can be about finding those little meanings every day in those tiny moments.
You got it. And it's not about forcing meaning, but being open to those possibilities that come our way.
Okay. And then taking action.
Right.
Frankl really stressed how important it is to dedicate ourselves to something bigger than us, whether that's a cause, a creative project, or just helping other people.
I like that. Okay, so we've got these different ways to find meaning, but what about when we're feeling totally lost?
Yeah.
When we don't even know where to begin looking for it?
Right.
Didn't Frankl talk about something called dereflection?
He did.
What's that?
De-reflection is a key technique in logotherapy.
Okay.
It's all about shifting our focus away from ourselves and towards something bigger.
So instead of getting caught up in our problems or insecurities, we put our energy outward.
Exactly. Like, he used the example of a patient who had insomnia.
Okay.
And instead of telling them to try to fall asleep, he told them to try as hard as they could to stay awake.
Oh, wow.
And by shifting their focus, the patient was able to overcome the anxiety that was keeping them up.
It's like the opposite of what you'd think you should do.
It is, but it makes sense because when we think too much about our anxieties, they just get worse.
They do.
So this de-reflection is about breaking free from those cycles of overthinking and being self-absorbed.
Exactly.
So like instead of worrying about all our own stuff, we could, volunteer our time or get involved in a cause we care about, or even just focus on being present when we're with other people.
Exactly. And, that's just one of the many techniques that Frankl developed.
Right.
What's so powerful about man's search for meaning is that it's not just about surviving the Holocaust. It's like a guide for how to deal with the challenges of being human.
Yeah.
Finding that sense of purpose that helps us get through the tough times in life.
And I think that's why it still speaks to people today,
Yeah.
Even after all these years, we all struggle with finding meaning at some point.
We do.
And Frankl's ideas, they give us a framework,
They do.
a way to approach those struggles with courage and hope.
Right.
He even uses the term tragic optimism.
He does.
Which sounds kind of weird, but it actually makes a lot of sense.
It's a powerful concept. It means, acknowledging the tragic parts of life.
Yeah, the pain, the loss, the suffering.
All of that, but choosing to find meaning and purpose anyway.
Right.
It's not about pretending the darkness isn't there.
Yeah.
It's about finding that little bit of light, that spark of hope that keeps us going.
So it's like holding both of those things in your mind at the same time.
Yeah.
The tragedy and the optimism, and realizing that even in the darkest times, there's still a chance for growth, for finding something meaningful.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into man's search for meaning, what's the main takeaway?
I think the most important thing to remember is that meaning isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create through the choices we make and the things we do.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our own lives, finding purpose in our work, our relationships, how we deal with challenges.
And it doesn't have to be some big, huge thing, right?
No, it doesn't.
It can be found in the everyday stuff.
It can.
The little acts of kindness, the moments of joy, the connections we make with other people.
Absolutely.
It's about bringing intention and purpose to our lives no matter what's going on around us.
Exactly. And I think Frankl would also say that we should embrace the challenges we face.
Oh, right.
Not see them as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow and learn about ourselves. It's often in those tough moments that we find our greatest strengths and resilience.
That's so true. So as we leave our listener with this, something to think about.
Yes.
Is there a question, maybe something specific they could reflect on as they go about their day?
Yeah.
Inspired by Frankl's message.
What's one small thing you could do today to find more meaning in your own life? Using the examples from Frankl's book.
I love that it's a great reminder that we all have the power to make a difference.
We do.
To create meaning in our own lives and the lives of others. And we can start right now. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you found this exploration of man's search for meaning as interesting as we did, please consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend who might also find Frankl's wisdom helpful. And if you want to learn more, we've put some links in the show notes where you can buy the book and find out more about logotherapy. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep finding that meaning in your life.